So you recovered yet? Almost?
Well, I was doing pretty good, and my wife got me on a trip last weekend, so
Ah,
Well, someplace exciting.
we went to Mount Dora, which is exciting for us.
I don't know where that is. Where is that?
It's just north of Orlando.
yeah, it's up towards the Winter Haven area. We'll pass that on the Orlando side. Mount
Okay.
Dora's a nice place.
It is very nice.
It's-
Has a-
But it's not by a beach.
No, it's not.
By a lake, a really big lake.
They actually, they've got a decent high school band, and I know it's very competitive there in Mount Dora, and always been a good group. Another little place to go, if you can get you up there sometimes, Micanopy. That's up by Gainesville.
Okay.
Nice little town. They have a nice fall festival there, that's really fun.
What's it
It's good
called?
to know.
Micanopy?
No, I'm not familiar with that one. I've been to Mount Dora, which is a fun place. But
Yeah. Micanopy became most popular when they filmed Doc Hollywood with it was like the early 90s. Sorry, I'm dry throat there. The Michael J. Fox was started in that movie, so it became got its popularity from that, but they've always been in the little town. Doc Hollywood. That's just 2023 I broke down, so we could use it as a jumping off point to talk about everything that's there.
Sounds good.
Okay, it's a writing.
Usually doing this. Page 13.
yeah, I know.
Page 6. Although I think he's got it memorized now, so I'm in good shape. Good work, by the way, it looks good. So a few little things that I'll show you that have affected this, that you didn't know about, but
Okay. Yeah, that's the thing too, when you do it early in the year, there's always, a couple projects no one's thinking of. that,
yeah, that's
come
part
to
of it,
light.
but we also have a $75,000 transfer into the
Oh,
reserves that
okay.
hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
And that'll affect the master substantially, which is good.
Yeah, good, because
Bring it down from,
they could use it. Yeah.
yeah, bring it down a bit, so I'm thrilled about that. That's a happy accident.
Yeah, good. Is there anyone calling in too?
Well, we're hooked up, but we're waiting to see.
Yeah, there might be some people calling. Yeah, I think Joanna's here actually.
Hey, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me.
No, we can't.
Very funny.
What neighborhood did we want to start with?
I was gonna say, let's start with the master. Probably the easiest. The other ones will go pretty quickly after we get through the master. So,
It has the most combines for sure.
yeah. All right, we ready to start?
I'd say so, yeah.
Steve, it's on you.
Okay. All right, so I'll just give you a little background on each place, and I'll only talk about the one we're looking at specifically that time, and we'll get to each of the sub-associations in due time, and then we'll talk about their specific
Do
ones.
you have some documents to look at?
Oh, I have extras if you
We
need some.
have some extras if you need some. This is hard to hear.
Okay, here's a round of paper.
You're more than welcome to sit at the table too, if you like.
Yeah.
We're out over here.
You don't have to. Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't have to sit all the way back there. Feel bad.
All right, so the master, but just globally, my partner and I, Paul, were here on January 13th of this year. We submitted the reports on March 11th to Heather, and then there were just a few minor tweaks she had us make, and then the revised reports were sent to Heather, and then I think ultimately then you guys on March 28th. So in the master, the big areas we looked at were parking, roofing, pool area, retaining walls, dog park, lake house, fitness center, game room, walkways, playground, and wells. So before I talk about the different breakdowns of the fundings of which you have the sheet there, are you guys all familiar with what component funding is versus pooled funding? 'Cause it might be, it might make sense to kind of.
Yeah, when I cover the basic on.
Yeah, sure. So right now you guys are on the component funding. So what that means is money in a designated category. Which categories are here for the master, but what that means is money in a specific category can only be used for items in that category. So for instance, you have parking reserve. So money for parking can only be used for parking. You have a roofing reserve. So money for roofing can only be used for roofing. And then paint, you have a painting reserve. So only money for painting can be used for painting. And the same with pool and retaining wall. And then you have kind of a catch-all category, and that's general. So in this report, I lumped all the other items in the general category to try to make it jive with how you're currently set up. So the component funding works where you can only use the money designated for each of those items, or each of those categories for those specific items. There is an alternate method of funding that's called the pooled method. So what the pooled method does, it takes all the items and you just have one funding account. So in the pooled method scenario, you have any of the items can be funded just with overall one account. So essentially you consolidate your accounts into one funding account and it pays for all the items. There are different schools of thought as to which one is better or more appropriate. I'll give you my personal opinion, and then I'll kind of go over, what the pros and cons are of each. But my personal opinion is I do like the pooled method better. I think it, in a larger association, it makes your life easier. By just having the one funding source, you can cash flow things much easier. The component method is more restrictive, but some people like that some of the items can only be paid for by specific funds. The component method is a little more restrictive. Just generally speaking too, the larger association is, it's a little easier being on pooled method. Like when you have something like the master, and I don't remember how many items there are off the top of my head. I want to say 80 or so. It can be kind of tricky, trying to match up the category balances so everything is in, good order. What tends to happen in those situations is like sometimes one category will have enough money, or sometimes even too much money, and another category will be underfunded. With the pool method, since you only have one funding source, it all kind of balances out and works more smoothly. So that's just kind of a background.
I have a quick question on that, because I may be way off on this, but is there a way to have a pool funding method, but with a component layer on top of it?
Kind of. So like, I mean, you could.
So to go a little deeper on that question, is what I'm trying to do is exactly avoid that. If one component was underfunded and the other was overfunded, but ultimately your pool, you can adjust that.
Oh, so you can't have just like a catch-all per se, but what you can do is you could have, specific one or two or three specific categories, and then say, hey, all the rest of the items are pooled. You can kind of do a hybrid thing. I don't personally recommend that just because it gets confusing to tell people, and
What we've done in the
help them
past, or what I've done in my past, is we track the components, but we pool the money in case we have to pull from one to the other just to make it happen.
That's what I'm stating.
We still can track it. like, this is what we think we should
You
have.
still have that component later, it's just not.
Yeah, but we're not spending by the component. So if we're underfunded in one and it gets fully and we have to do that particular component a year in advance, we can pull from the others to get it done and then refund it, basically by the others, catching up to it for next year.
Yeah,
That's a better way to go with the pooling. The downside is pooling tends to be a little higher each month for most things, For the component will be lower on some areas, but it's going to end up being higher for our master. So there's like a 6 to 1, half dozen the other kind of thing going on here. So
yeah, exactly. It doesn't always work out that way, but
it did this time.
yeah, exactly. And it just depends too, kind of where your starting point is, and there's a number of variables.
Of course.
But yeah, so discussing the specific numbers here. So the component projections are $14.03 per member per month for 2023, and just under $209,000 in total funding. The pooled method using inflation turns out to be $8.51 per member per month and $126,700. The pooled method without inflation is $7.10 per member per month and $105,800 in total funding. One of the reasons the component is pretty different here is because, so you're 27% funded, so you're a little behind
Yeah,
there.
underfunded.
But the $75,000 is going to change that
Number drastically.
drastically.
Yeah.
The component method, when you're behind, it fully funds everything in the remaining life of the item. So basically it catches you up much faster. So that's why it's really front loaded, because you have you have some painting we're projecting for next year, but then like pool and some fitness equipment potentially in 2024. And those start to get into be more costly items.
In actuality, I mean, the 75,000 offset actually wipes the component down to $100 and some each month, and then the pooled method down to $42 each month each year for each unit. So it changes that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
yeah,
Sean, can you
Remember,
repeat that,
remember we
please?
have a debt, a $75,000 debt that
Yes.
is not transferred from the master account into reserves, which still has to happen. And then when that does happen, it'll offset our beginning balance at the end of this year by 75,000. So the numbers that are in here are skewed by that 75,000. We're gonna have a better starting point
Yeah.
if we're reducing the amount we need to fund.
Oh, I understand that. I didn't hear your numbers. You said
Oh,
what the
it should
difference
be,
was there.
for the component, it'll be 102 and change. And for the pool, it'll end up being about $48 to $49. I didn't do the exact math, but that's pretty close if I'm not mistaken. Steve would be able to correct it, so I'm hoping he'll run those numbers for us later on.
Yeah, so again, it'll make the biggest change in the component, just because the money that's where it's really front loading it, some of that burden will be lifted with that 75,000. So yeah, that's kind of a brief overview of everything. Were there any specific questions or items that you guys wanted to discuss with the master?
I went through it pretty tooth and nail. I think Tommy did too. I think we have all the components that we were expecting to see in this. Am I mistaken in that? Did we miss anything?
I just want to make sure that we captured all the new network stuff, camera security.
Yeah, we've got, I saw that you did make an adjustment in here. I did see that. And then we have a new expense that will show up next year because we're already going to make it, whatever the $6,000 we approved, that's going to come out of the funding. So it's going to go down 6 when you're starting next year.
Okay, and that's for like an access system?
It is.
Mhm.
And the new access system will be all put in play this year. So its useful life will start from this year as
Okay.
opposed to where you have it at the moment.
Okay, and that system will cover what specifically?
Cameras, access points, the Wi-Fi system, and some of the phones even, right?
Phones, everything network, literally everything network, phone related, access control system related. I want to say total cost and everything is roughly 26,000.
Oh, 26, okay.
Right, but we're only taking 6 from reserve. We're actually refunding from other sources in our budget this year. The other
Eight from
20,
reserve.
Yeah. 8 from reserve, sorry, 8. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I was
Yeah, when
gonna
you
say,
were-
it was just approved.
When you were describing all this, I thought, how do you get that for $6,000? Yeah, okay.
We had
That
already
makes-
built in the budget some components to be replaced and some budgets of things that were costing us to run, like the card printer and the ink for it.
Yeah,
And we pulled that into replacing it with a better system that costs us less to operate.
yeah, and that's the thing, like you'll find with access and security to, it may not stop working after 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, but the technology improves so much that it's,
10 years is a long time when tech comes involved. You can ask,
Yeah.
I mean, that 10 days is sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a modular system, so at some point we can upgrade pieces.
yeah,
So as
Yeah.
they wear out and better stuff comes along.
We've got a couple techies that are sitting in this room, so.
oh, okay. So near and dear to your heart. And so, like, does that include too, like, new actual readers themselves?
Everything.
Everything, okay.
Everything's gonna be replaced, basically. The first one's on the door that you walked in already, so this one, those two white boxes on the outside has a nice access reader. It's RF signal, you don't have to print cards, it'll be great.
All right.
I have a question pertaining to the well pump.
Sure.
It is in our community, but it's been used by the HOA coming over to fill up their tanks with water. Is that an expense when it breaks that it falls under the main HOA or just Westlake?
Yeah, so yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I have a spreadsheet here of the actual
There's more than one well pump.
breakdown. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
incredibly complicated on like, so like the ones, yeah, so the ones inside the specific sub-associations, I think are all belong to like the sub-associations. The ones that are on like HOA grounds, they have a cost sharing agreement with the CDD. And
So, yeah, so the one that is located in Westlake is.
Part of the Westlake Association.
yeah, so that, you're right, the
part
one,
of The CDD, so I
Yeah,
don't
correct,
know
yep.
how that works.
yep, so the one in Westlake, yeah, they're 100%.
Because the amount that we
responsible.
have in there, because they're fixing the irrigation because there's, one main pump and there's some issue and 7,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money to, especially, I don't know, have they come up with the estimates for the repairs for the other 5 or 6 pumps that are in there?
We only have one pump.
There's the main pump and then there's like 4 or 5 little, I don't know.
The points.
pumps. Yeah.
The drop points, there's
So-
only one pump.
Is $7,000 gonna be enough to do what we need to do if that main pump? Say.
Yeah, so a submersible pump, yeah, they cost $6,000 or $7,000. If, you're doing more extensive irrigation stuff, I mean, then, or, I don't know if you have like a,
Well, that's what I'm just saying, that's a low number in this study.
yeah, typically, associations will do like spot repairs as necessary with irrigation from operating. If you're,
I think she's talking specifically about the expense for the pump itself.
Mhm.
oh, okay. Yeah, I would expect the $7,000 to be sufficient to replace the pump.
I think one of the things important to kind of point out is that the reserve study is for the asset alone, not for
Yeah.
normal maintenance and normal.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, that's kind of the point I was trying to make with that.
I hope that helped.
Part of it too is, we haven't talked too much about it here, but I was aware through the Encore side that the CDD has been maintaining those pumps up until this year.
Right.
And then they said they wanted us to put in our reserves, the repairs of them beyond just normal wear
And we
and
have
tear.
done the same, actually.
We haven't done anything yet, because the last time we spoke to them, they said they were gonna get you guys, Encore, CDD, all in the same room, and they were all gonna agree on, because there's a certain aspect of transition that they have some funds that are available that may be able to pull over into the,
Yeah.
Tommy, hear me out on this.
it-
Our experience with the CDD is there's no funds available for anything we want to do ever.
This is,
but this is what they want to do.
This is a different conversation than what is tonight, but no, we are in works with CD. There's no money pulled from the CD. CD is requesting that we take over responsibilities by a percentage use basis for the wells. we're more than willing to do that. We need to know what the cost is. We're waiting for the CDD to come back and break that down with Ballinger and let us know past 2 years what their cost was and what the percentage base would be. They haven't yet to do that.
Okay, so I saw some summary information about that
Mhm.
when I was hearing this, and all they were proposing we do is that we set an amount aside in our reserve funds to cover the major repairs. They
Sure.
were still going to keep control of it and run it throughout the year.
That's not the conversation I had with the CD. That's not the ongoing conversation with the CD.
That's how it was presented to me, but the
It could have
person,
been, but
the
that's-
person who presented it to me may not have understood it correctly. So why are we not having, this is just a quick aside here. Why are we not having that conversation?
Because I've already had the conversation. We are actually waiting on the CDD to come back
Okay.
with information. We know exactly, we have a full breakdown of percentage per well, what we should be paying for.
Mhm.
That's not the question. The question is, I think they have like a.
Yeah.
I don't remember the number, but it was a very high number that they spent on well repair last year.
Yeah.
Insanely high. But they're trying to say, oh, well, your percentage is only gonna cost you a couple $100 a month, but it does, the math doesn't equal. So I need to see their full breakdown of the 12-month repair, then I can say, hey, this is what it's gonna cost on average when these wells break
That
down.
would be
get
your
repaired.
next cost.
And then we can-
Okay.
Yeah, they're supposed to come up with an agreement written by the CDD and an attorney. spelling out all the
And us.
Um,
It was going to balance it out between the three of us, I think.
And again, I don't think it's an agreement issue. It's is this gonna cost
What's the-
50 grand, 60 grand,
Right.
100 grand?
But we have three in our property that they're,
You're not.
okay, sorry. But it sounds like you've already got it in here.
Yeah, and in the reserve study on the specific ones, I have, Heather gave me a spreadsheet here on the percent. So if the HOA owns 20%, it's only 20% of the, of the expected replacement cost. So
That's the agreement usage.
yeah,
That's pretty accurate.
but yeah, it's a complicated agreement that's, I can see you guys are pulling your hair
It's a
out.
complicated agreement.
Yeah, with it.
Is this in our printout here?
That is not.
It's not, but in the report with each of the line items, like with the well pump, it does reference their ownership. So
Mhm.
like on page 24 here, like at the
Oh, yeah.
bottom, it tells you what it is and then your responsibility on it.
Steve, would it be possible to send your worksheet just so we have it? That'd be helpful, I think.
Would it be possible what?
Send that
Did you
worksheet.
get a copy of your?
Oh, sure. Okay.
I mean,
Spreadsheet?
Email it to me if you want.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see if I have this electronically or not. If not, I'll just scan this and send it to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
as
Just
is.
so
Yeah.
so we have a reference to the worksheet, so.
Because I think too, and actually when Heather gave this to me in January, from the start to later, it actually changed a little bit, but I think I have the revision,
Okay, great.
revised amounts on here.
Things change here fairly rapidly, don't you guys agree?
Our starting point's changing faster than everything else is.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
It just keeps-
So I do have a couple other things that I noticed on here that were just simple errors. The total unit count is 1242.
Oh, okay.
Your reference is 1241.
All right.
The other counts are okay, except for we have an interesting situation with Sandpiper that we are not totally sold yet. So I'm not asking you to build it in, because you're building best case scenario. We're hoping that'll be sold by the beginning of 2023. That'd be
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
and that's best case scenario. But this could be adjusted if we don't sell those homes, and then let the board know that, so they understand that their input to this number goes down and so does this,
Yeah,
which can affect how much each person gets to pay into it.
yeah.
Which I'll probably be in communication with you on that when it changes, then we can basically.
And I gotta look, I think there's only 20 addresses that we're waiting for.
Right, but you're
And some of
talking,
those need reporting on the
You-
process. So
you're also talking about 20 times, $168
I
possibly.
think the real number is probably less than that.
Okay, yeah, I got the sales report from the last month I've been asking for and keeping it on my spreadsheet, so I kind of know what's going on with
Do
it.
you think you're gonna get to build out there or by the end of the year?
They have slowed to a crawl, as far as the sales have gone.
Because of the interest rates?
Yeah, everything is slowed down, so yeah, we're hoping knock on something because we're losing revenue on it. We actually, our budget's based without it. So we're pretty good there.
Yeah,
But it'd be nice to have the budget to stipend for
Yeah.
extra things.
it'd just be nice too to have a clean start for 2023 where it's all sold and, just kind of easy to comprehend too, as opposed to,
Having nice round numbers is always helpful.
yeah.
I think there's a couple of us who will attest to that, so yeah.
Yeah, is there anything else you guys wanted to discuss with the master?
I'm actually pretty good with the components. John, you took a look at this. The only thing that I'd like to see the offset of that 75, which should be transferred this month.
Yeah,
And then that'll give us a better assessment of which way we're gonna go with it. I know it won't affect the lower. The pooling funding on all 4 of the sub areas is higher if we go with pooling, and I absolutely, tell me if I'm wrong here, highly recommend doing the inflation, because we're seeing an 8.5% inflation rate this year.
yeah, and that's a good point
That
too.
was gonna be,
Something
yeah,
I
my
want to
question.
mention. So, yeah, the report, we have 2.5%, and that's per year over 30 years. So when you look back at history over like the last 30 years, inflation is about 2.5%. If you go back 100 years, it's about 3%. So, year over year to right now, yeah, we've had about 8.5%, which is nuts. But I also don't think that's,
Highest since 1981.
yeah, 40 years, yeah. But I also don't think that's, likely to continue year after year after year. I mean, that would be,
That's all we have presidential elections for.
yeah, yeah, that would be catastrophic. I mean,
Sorry,
if-
I'm digging at Kathy here a little bit, because she's on that side.
well, but the point is, I mean, like, there is 8.5% inflation year after year, things would double in 8 years. I mean, that's incredibly unlikely. I mean, so I think it's most appropriate to look back at history, use an average over the 30-year window than to, kind of overreact with what's going on currently. I mean, I think too, the Fed has raised interest rates and, that's started to slow things down quite a bit. And I think they've mentioned they're going to do it one more time before the end of the year too. So,
What we've seen in our budget so far, both CDD and I'm sure in Encore, I'm not familiar with their budget, but is that we're seeing, in some cases like electricity and the cost of our leases for our lamp posts have gone up nearly 30%.
yeah.
38% was what they said.
38%. Okay, 38%, which is ungodly.
Yeah.
So that takes a stipend out of the budget we never expected to
Yeah.
happen. So I always like to have a contingency on the area
Yeah.
of caution.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be opposed to looking at a number that's more closer to 3%, which is again.
Yeah, if you want to say 3%, I can't argue. with that.
That's
I
a
mean,
10-year average right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I can't.
anyone have an argument that besides me?
That's totally reasonable.
Well, one of the things I had in mind was, the interest, the inflation rate doesn't drop quickly. Doesn't go up quickly, but it doesn't drop quickly. In fact, part of what we're talking about here is this raise this last 6 or 8 months
Right.
has been
Huge.
highly unusual.
Yeah,
It would seem to me, since the dollar's going in on the front end, get magnified when you get out 30 years or 10 years or wherever you are in the process on the pooled assets, whether we might be better off doing a hybrid adjustment for inflation to put it higher here in the first year or two, expecting it will go down lower for the balance of the
I
time.
understand.
And that way we would be able to at least keep up with the inflation for the near term for the people, for the things we're setting aside for, and we'll be able to catch up more easily as we get down the road.
So amortize the inflation rate over the next 30 years, which is thinking about starting at the high point.
yeah,
And just, and I'm not talking about, 30 years is a long time.
Well, that's what the report goes out.
yeah, it's a 30-year.
Yeah, so the report.
Right, but I'm saying that to assume something like inflation, especially now, that 2.5% or 3% even, that it'll average out. If it stays at 6% for 5 years, dramatically impacts where we're going to end up later in the 30 years
Absolutely.
process.
Absolutely does.
So one of the things that, what I'm trying to say is we would take a hybrid approach and say, let's say for the first, because we're just setting this thing up new, for the first
3 years.
4 years, 3 years, or 4 years, we'd set it at a higher than what normal would be in your calculations, but perhaps lower than 8%. I would say like 6%, and run that for 2-3 years. Now we're going to reassess where we're going to be down the road, you know, so when we do our reassessment at that point, I'd like to see us at least have kept up with stuff and not falling behind because we estimated inflation in these first 3 or 4 years when it was going to be highest anyway, because it is not going to drop.
So he and I are on the same page. He's just looking at it with a broader spectrum than I was. I wasn't planning to go 6% on it, but I like that idea.
Well,
I agree with
it's-
that.
it is only for a shorter period of time, anticipating that we'll come back down to something more historically reasonable, but it keeps us from getting behind right at the very beginning
One of
and
the
then
things
having to catch up.
We've been faced with is that, you know, starting this out, we're in our 7th year as an association from builder to
Yeah,
our 3rd year as running our own
yeah, right.
with nothing.
The first 7 years were close to zero, probably, right?
So
Yeah.
now
That's-
we're
that's
playing
very
catch
good.
up
Yeah.
and we're trying to figure out how to make it work so that we don't have to keep making these drastic changes
Yeah.
in the way we fund it, the way we do dues, the way we do everything.
Yeah.
So I think I was on the same mindset. I was scared to say 6%. I'm glad you did. But I looked at the rate we've gone to 8.5 inside of 3 months, and it won't come down easily. People get used to this, they stay at it for a while. You know,
The only thing I would
Well,
say though
inflation is
is,
a factor too. so.
I think the costs are at that, but like, you know, I mean, thinking ahead in 2023, is there going to be another war in Ukraine? I mean, like, these are some of the, you know, totally unpredictable factors that got to that high level. So, I mean, you know, I don't think the costs are going to reverse,
Right.
but I don't see why, you know, we continue like that. I mean, like, I think, you know, there's still the supply chain stuff, but I do think that's going to ease over time. And, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it too
Well, we're also
optimistically, but
planning to reassess every 3rd year anyway.
Yeah.
right? So the idea is that at that time, if we thought we overshot it, that's, you know, we can curve it back at the
Mhm.
time. So I think I'm on board with doing something higher than the norm at this point, just because it is unpredictable. And I realize it's not going to stay like this,
yeah,
but this year, okay, you know, I mean, people are expecting because of the you know, inflation rate that everything's going up, it will probably be prudent to think. I'll give you an example. I'm going to segue for a second. We have a proposed fence change in the Westlake area, which is my home area. And the quotes we came in are way out from the rest of it. I mean, $15,000. So we're trying to get that done so it doesn't affect, by the way, that it won't, whatever happens is going to happen this year and not
Yeah,
on next year. So you can take that out of it too, by the way.
yeah, we'll get to that one.
So
Well, it does affect the beginning balance.
beginning balance, but doesn't affect the actual funding calculation, right? So, but does affect the beginning balance. So but in any event, that's a huge percentage difference. That's not 8.5%.
Yeah,
We're talking
Yeah.
about, you know.
well, that's the thing
way over
too. I mean,
50%.
right now, certain commodities are just totally volatile, you know, oil and even wood, you know, wood in the 2020 year, you know, hit astronomical prices, came down, and now has gone up a fair amount again.
So
So, yeah.
anyway, those are suggestions. Anyway,
The other thing I had a thought about was, I've been thinking about this. I have joint loyalties here because I'm also on the board at Encore, which is one of our subgroups, and we have our own budgets, reserves, and everything. And I'm not in the finance area this year. I was the last 3 years. But one of the things that I was thinking about is that the reserves that we put together here really, it covers a broad range of assets that have different lives. Some of them as short as 3 to 4 years, and some of them as long as 20 to 25 years. So one of the things I had been toying was a composite where you would take assets that had a regular 3 to 4 year life cycle, where we're really just setting aside money to cover these short-term expenditures. Like in our case, we have a pickleball court, and every 5 years it has to be funded, but it's $20,000 when we do it. So it's like we're setting aside $5,000 a year, and then that way we'll have the money on hand on a regular routine basis. Whereas there are many other things, biggest example being our facility, which is the Oasis, that has more like a 25 to 30 year total life. And it has a longer period of time that we need to consider the replacements aspects of it. So in my way of thinking, the pooled approach is very helpful for the larger and longer range assets. But for those things that are going to expire quickly, that we use them up, that a component way of handling them might be better, so that these short-lived, relatively small dollar amount items would be set aside specifically to cover that. But the bigger picture of the overall larger items that we address would carry out for the 30 years and be in a pooled situation, because in 30 years, you don't know that this is going to happen in the 5th year, the 10th year, or the 12th year, but it makes a really big difference depending on
But
when it happens.
the pooled method, though, it does incorporate all those things. So like, let's say you're doing something to your pickleball court every 4 years, it shows up, 2022, 2026, 2030, 2034. So that's all kind of baked into the numbers in the mathematical model with that.
Just one thing, the big action item for the board to consider. Our charter specifically states all the reserves are components.
It does.
So
I think the law says they're all pooled though.
The law, you're talking about the 720?
Florida's law, yeah.
I haven't seen that. I'll have to look.
I looked at that several years ago.
They came up with a new version this year, by the way. You should probably download.
Everything's changing,
Well, I
but
mean,
at the
it-
time that what
They
I
haven't
was,
changed the 720 since 2015, and
Sure.
this is the first new version since then, and it's got some changes. So I don't remember seeing that in this new version, but we can certainly look.
yeah, it's just,
Is that something you knew, Steve?
Yeah, so you were saying specifically, what about
The
720?
the state, the state
Statute.
statutes
statute.
for chart, it's basically the 720, chapter 720 governs the HOA and the rules that we go in there. So it's just gonna pull it up here and see if we can search for it real quick. I've got a new copy of it. On it.
Because I followed, all the legislative action very closely, but I was not aware that 720 changed in certainly in any.
Yeah, there's a new version that got
Meaningful
released
way.
in January, believe it or not. And here's the copy of it. So I'm just gonna do a find real quick for, it says pooled.
Yeah, just search pool, because they call it
Yeah.
probably pooling method or something.
Funding formulas for reserves authorized by this section must be based on a separate analysis of each of the required assets, or, so that's component or pooled.
no, that's how you determine it. You have to determine the needs based upon the components. That's why we do this listing, and his suggestion here
Yeah, so,
is pool, because you do the same analysis.
right, exactly. Whether you use component or pooled funding, it's still, you still use the same items that go into the same, go into the mathematical model.
And it says funding formulas for reserves authorized by this section must be based on a separate analysis of each of the required assets, or a pooled analysis of 2 or more of the required assets. The only other reference, there's only 3 references in the association maintains, if the association maintains a pooled account or 2 or more of the required reserve assets, the amount of the contribution to the pooled reserve account as disclosed. So it's saying, it's giving us an if or on these, not saying you must. It's only 3 references to pool in the whole document, which is 76 pages.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds, based on that, sounds basically like kind of the status quo. in terms of reserves anyway.
Well, except ours is based on components, our old approach.
Yeah. Yeah, so, right, if you formally switch to pooled, I do believe that's, I believe it's a vote of the membership,
Yeah,
and not just the board. I think
Yes.
it's
because
just
it's
a,
in our charter.
yeah, I think it's a majority vote of the.
75% according to our rules.
Oh, in your specific, you have,
Yeah.
wow, so,
It's high.
I know,
oh,
it's
that's,
impossible.
I don't like that at all.
We can't get 75% to vote.
No, I have no idea if this is why your charter was that way, but I've been told at different times that when developers set up reserves, that they try to set it up in component form because they're afraid that if they give an association pooled reserves right at turnover, that they could take that money and
Blow it, yeah.
no, worse, file a
Or
lawsuit.
injunction against them.
A
yeah.
lawsuit like, or
Never thought of it that way.
construction defect type
But
stuff.
you can't pull from your reserves for a lawsuit. so
Yeah,
that's-
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know if that's exactly true or not.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, it's an interesting concept. I never thought of
Yeah.
it that way, but that's interesting.
So we're stuck with component funding now.
Does our bylaws actually state component?
I believe it does. I
Jason?
believe Jason and I believe I read it.
I got it up right now.
Yeah, I've got a searchable copy here too, so.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, I think we are. But if you have it open, or I can try to open it, if we want to look at that more closely.
Yeah, it's on
Um,
page 39.
Okay, let me look. Page 39.
Mhm.
Sometimes I don't like you, by the way.
Yeah, Jason, come on, man.
I appreciate. that
they
you
can
keep
save
paying
paper,
attention,
you
but I
gotta go
sometimes don't
like
like you. Actually, I don't know if you guys realize this, but when I sent the email out, I forgot this, my recommendation was to stick with the component, just because I felt it was a better way to manage the money, but I didn't know it was a requirement, I wouldn't even have said it. I'm sorry, which page again?
He said 39.
Yeah, let me just go down to it. Doesn't matter, so I'm just gonna have to go down, I'm on 22.
Basically, the budget shall designate the components to which the reserve council may be used.
Because it's specifically state component method.
Yeah, there's the way that you put together your numbers are always on component basis. But how it comes out is what we're looking at here.
So what you just said does not definitively say we have to stick with component.
You said our charter?
Yeah, I'm in the charter. Page 39, not page 39 as the document falls by the numbers on the page,
Yeah.
which is kind of irritating at best.
Irritating a lot.
Calculation of basis, that's all it says, though. That's the category it's under, is calculation of the base of assets. Of course, it's component calculate. It doesn't state that the calculation of service area assets are general budget levied equally against only total. Yeah, it's not specifically saying a method, it's just saying that calculated by component, not as component funded.
Yeah, so I think calculated by component is just,
What you had to do in the
yeah,
first place.
exactly. Well, you just have to have a schedule and you're gonna look at each reserve item.
That's how you make your money. We gotta look after you guys.
Yeah, we never got you.
All right, is there anything else on, well, oh, actually circling back to this, then, so maybe for the next, let's say 3 years, try to use 6% inflation and then,
Reassess on the third year,
Yeah,
Reassess
okay.
on the third.
if that's okay with you.
sure, and then 3% otherwise,
I think so.
okay.
After that, 3%, good number, and then we can, maybe if it comes down. He's talking about for the 30-year.
Well,
proportion.
right, but I mean, you mean to do it as his calculations at this time.
Right,
The 30, after the third year. to do
right,
that.
because basically when we get to the third year, the numbers are gonna all shift anyway, so it's more of a projection, the 30 years of projection. where we're-
Forecast, yeah.
Yeah, it may be a lot different if the cost of stuff doesn't.
That's why we have to do it every
We're
3
only doing
years.
it
That's
based on
exactly right.
inflation, but you know, it's abnormal. Recessions are gonna affect us. You know, so.
All right, okay. Moving on from that one.
I don't understand what my hairline has to do with this. Oh,
He said recession, not
Oh, I'm
receding.
recessed, I heard recessed hair, I think. So.
Mhm.
All right, next one we'll talk about is the paired villas. So,
There it goes, that's green.
brief summary of that. So paired villas are relatively simple. Really, the only areas you have there are roofing and painting. So the component method projected $83.01 per member per month and $99,608 in funding. The pooled method with inflation was $94.08 per member per month and $112,900 in total funding. And the pool method without inflation was $84.67 per member per month and $101,600. Overall, it was considered to be 63% funded.
Yeah, it's actually one of the better funded ones in the group. There is something unusual about this particular section. There are a handful of houses, I can't remember the quantity without looking, that have a retaining wall that doesn't, that we are actually charging them extra dues to cover the retaining wall each month. It's 8. I thought it was 8 or 9, something like that, but it's 8 homes. When they set this up, they weren't giving everyone the same dues because those are only on their homes, affecting only their homes. So that particular component itself, I don't know if there's a different schedule that has to be done for the 8 homes, because basically that component shouldn't affect the other group.
Yeah, okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
It wouldn't affect the others if their houses fell in the ditch.
No, they're not even close to the ditch, but the point is,
Value of their home.
we're charging them extra, so I don't think we can actually amortize it to the other owners and take it away from them. We could, I mean, we certainly
Well,
can.
it is, you know, if you're gonna do it as a group, each unit has its own unique features, no matter what you do. So the question is that we've already set aside these paired homes as being unique. Plus they get the rest of what goes on that everybody else gets covered. So to subdivide that even further down would.
We're currently already doing that. That's what I'm trying to say. Do we want to entertain not doing that?
I remember there's a reason we can't.
Something in the charter
Yeah,
that prevents us from
we
doing
have
that.
to separate those retaining walls.
I don't remember the exact comment, but we went through this in the budget and like, this is nuts. Why are we doing it this way? And then,
We circled back to.
so,
we have to.
yeah, we have to do it this way for some reason unless we change the charter, which we just heard how
Because
that
the
works.
developers had to sell the homes, I think.
Probably. It's probably
So
what it is.
Yeah, so I don't think I have those in there, man. 'cause
It's not.
in
I was
the,
gonna
I
say,
saw it in the master, you had retaining walls.
yeah, we have all sorts of retaining walls in other ones, and that was tricky trying to figure
We do
out.
have components with retaining
Oh.
walls that are on the master property, but this is specifically
Yeah.
on the villa property.
Could you tell me an address where I could find one of those, and I'll look at it when we're done?
I can, maybe, not right a second, how about that? I will forward it to you. If I go look on the map, but
I might, yeah, I might. tell you.
I don't know if I'm confused, but that's confusing of the address, so it's just another thing.
No, we had to break it down, simplified it and said, hey, these people,
There's no address on there. It's
just a thought.
that's actually,
No, yeah.
yeah, not my phone, just saw. Yeah. Actually have a, let's see. It may be.
Yeah, I don't even-
Included in the master.
Yeah, that's what I was,
That's what I'm guessing at this point. right?
yeah. I'm trying to see if. Yeah, I'll go through those.
But I'm guessing that you've got it on a component that's in the wrong spot at this point. It needs to be, that particular retaining wall has been deemed as part of those homes. And we are charging a different monthly dues for those homes. It's about $60 more a month, actually.
That's a significant amount.
Sorry, what?
It's a significant amount difference in the monthly.
Let's open up the budget here and tell you. So got it top page here. Full budget. Budget copy. Yeah, so it is on the villas. Retaining wall section is paying, so it's some villas, 100, it's 100 of the villas, and breakdown that is. Um, $36 homes on the retaining wall.
36 of the villas.
I can get you the addresses.
And the dues,
There are 36, not 8.
36. 36, and the dues difference is $38 per unit per year.
So it's almost 40% of the units.
Darn close to me. How about that?
Huh?
Pretty darn close to me. Actually, this is 100 units, exactly 36%.
It's amazing how quick they can do.
All right, so I'll make that addition, and what I'll do is, it's not gonna affect like the overall schedule, because this is for all of them, but I'll just have a small little section specifically.
But if the asset is on the component for the master, to come off the master, to go on the villas as a separate item, it would affect both areas then.
Yeah.
Okay,
If I'll make a note here to check and see
Check
if I
that.
had that in the
or
master.
if we just mix it all together. one or two.
John, you said 36?
Yeah.
That's one.
That's what's on the published budget, it's 36. Yep.
He's looking on the list. Master list.
Now that-
So
okay.
Steve, on the master where you have retaining walls cost $35,
Yeah.
that we're gonna change that based on this information.
I'm gonna have to,
I gave him some homework. How about
yeah, I'm
that?
gonna have to look through my file here and see, because
And what I'll do is I'll get the addresses for you, so you have them, and know
Okay.
exactly where it's at.
I'm pretty sure there are some single family homes in the
On the
which would
retaining
kind of
wall,
be in the
yeah.
master domain that do have some retaining walls as well.
We still have that service area map that we sent you, correct? The one
Yeah.
that's got the color
Yeah,
map.
I'm sure I have it.
I sent that to you very early out when we
Yeah.
spoke back in October,
Well,
so,
That was a lifesaver of just trying to understand everything.
yeah. and it also gave you a quick estimate that way, so thank you for that. But that's part of it. Like you just put that. What you gotta do without Google Maps, and you get all these overheads that you wouldn't have
I
before.
know. I think about that all the time,
Yeah.
actually.
Got the map here. I can show
Sorry,
you.
36.
36?
He's not listening.
I sort of,
There's
know.
But that's this is the map I saw color coded because you printed it out, of course, so.
Yeah, that's just from the county.
So I'm looking at the units on the report. I see 35.
Well, what we
I
budgeted.
got the list here, Jan, and I just wrote it down.
Yeah, do you have actually the addresses and all?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on the map. He's
I'm
gonna
gonna print it out.
put the
He's
master
gonna
list.
print
Oh,
it for
perfect.
him.
That'll work.
Cool, okay.
So that's the only comment I had on that. That's a pretty big comment. Sorry about that.
Good things. But yeah, so I will check and report back to you on specifically with the retaining walls and make sure I have that.
So that would end up being a separate, just for that group, and then that would be added to the number you come up with the other. And
Yeah, and I'll note that in the narrative and I'll just have a small one-page
Okay.
section or something,
All
just
right, so-
specifically to handle that. Next, Sagewood. So Sagewood actually has quite a few different items. They have streets, roofing, painting, retaining walls, mail kiosks, fencing, and gates. The
Get paving stones and benches.
The findings with Sagewood, the component method was $110.07 per member per month, and $100,377 in annual funding for reserves. The pool method with inflation was $144.85 per member per month, and $132,100 in reserves. In the pool method without inflation was $106.69 per member per month, and $97,300. And this sub-association was considered to be 68% funded.
So where are these numbers he's reading off of here?
They're all on this report. Each of the last page of each section has the numbers right at the bottom.
Yeah, but on here, the summary you gave us, how does this relate to what he's reading off? Because I can't find them anywhere. Closest thing I got was for Sagewood under pooled inflation and number 132,103 down at the bottom there for what we would do for.
Oh, yeah, these
2023.
numbers are transcribed straight from this document here. So, that's there, they're all matched. Except for, he's rounded on this number, this is what he's planning on funding, and then he rounded from the payment, it comes out $3.20 difference. So the 144, all these numbers are source, and this is just calculated. So they're all, this is on page 15 of the Sagewood document.
Yeah, and then there's a small summary too on page 5 of
Yeah.
each report too under
Yeah.
financial condition.
I was just trying to relate. This is really good that they showed the comparison without having to flip through everything.
Yeah.
But I'm getting lost.
Yeah.
And then some of the numbers you're reading are
Thank
not
you so
numbers that he.
And these are
So here.
specifically for items, retaining walls in the paired villas.
Correct. Well, these are all the ones we have marked as retaining walls and mentioned they're only paired villas. We have retaining walls. No,
They're all in the paired villas.
they're all in the paired villas, right?
Yeah.
That's not-
Now, generally, where are these? Are they like in the backyard?
My understanding is in the rear of the houses.
Yeah, I looked at a few of them, they're almost all.
Man, I can't imagine.
There might be one or two on the side that I'm not.
There's
I can't imagine I didn't see these because we're all around there, but yeah,
There's
I'll
a
take a look.
runoff area in the back, and the wall is there, for the retaining. It's there, so it's just a whole background flat up, I think.
Are they about how high typically, or do they vary?
Well, it slopes a little bit from what I've seen, but they're not terribly high. I would say it's a retaining wall, not it's
I thought they were
maximum probably 4
I
feet.
just seen it really big.
They're like
Okay.
2 and 3 feet, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I will go take a look at this. Any comments on Sagewood?
I don't know that area as well as I do some of the others because the gate's always closed, but Tommy, was there anything?
They don't have anything really. A lot of state wood is CDD.
Yeah, right, that.
Small area that's
that's
HOA, it's really just mulch and.
Well, I do see there's a pump there, about,
Well,
yeah.
But the roads are private.
Yeah.
Just double checking on that.
Yeah, and
they're
one,
gates, I mean.
yeah, the gates in there. One interesting thing to note too is the sidewalks, they only have some of the sidewalks. The sidewalks more in the park area belong to the CDD, but the sidewalks that run with the
Front of
street,
homes or-
yeah. And there, I looked really closely at, there might have been a little bit that was behind the house that was theirs as well, but it's just another kind of oddity too, that you'd think in that one kind of enclosed area, they would have everything, but they don't. The CDD did have the sidewalks, particularly behind the houses. All right, next one up is Sandpiper Crest.
That's the fun one.
Okay, so on Sandpiper Crest, the main areas were streets, roofing, painting, mail kiosks, well pump, retaining walls. The findings on this one were the component method is $64.68 per member per month in 2023 and $83,822 in total funding. The pooled method with inflation was $81.87 per month and $106,100 in total funding. In the pooled method without inflation was $65.05 per member per month and $84,300 in total funding. And this one was considered to be 94% funded.
What's the newest? I think,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Which is amazing. right?
Yeah. Well, it's because, they didn't have those 0 years, basically. I mean, they,
Started collecting out of the gate.
yeah, when you really think about it, like a master plan community, when a sub-association or a section comes in at the end, in a lot of ways, that's the most beneficial. Now, maybe say like, prices are up, or like when there's more demand or interest in it to get, a remaining lot or house in there at the end, but they come into a much better organized situation where, a huge community like this, the first owners, you're kind of at the, you're just, whatever the developer does, you're kind of stuck with for those, first few years until the residents get control. So, that's kind of why they have a higher level of funding, just because they got to hit the ground running a lot more with it.
So what's their percentage?
They were 94.
So this is 94% of what that was projected they should have on hand.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So percent funded, yeah, let me kind of explain that too. So percent funded is a measure of what you have in reserves versus like a perfect theoretical balance. So we'll just do a real simple example, and we'll just negate inflation for this because it gets kind of complicated in future years. But how you think about it, so like, let's say you replace an item in 5 years and it costs $5,000. So each year you need to fund $1,000. So by the end of the 5 years, you have to have $5,000 to be 100% funded. So if you fund $1,000 that first year, you're 100% funded. If you only fund, let's say, $800, you're 80% funded. So that's how that breaks down. And it works too where you have a summation of all the items, so it starts to get a little bit complicated because items have different remaining lives and
Sure.
they're changing, their schedule and their costs when you add in inflation in future years. But that's generally how it works. So were there any items to discuss or add with Sandpiper Crest?
So the roofing and the painting, these are on the individual homes?
Well, no, they're not individual, they're townhomes, so
Yeah,
there's a
they're-
strip of them.
yeah.
So, yeah, there's 4 in each strip, so.
Yeah.
It's the whole house, yeah.
4 units, just like the pergolas would cover the exterior.
The exterior is covered by the HOA, so they've got the largest expense for the amount of roofing they have on those houses.
Well, especially since they, okay. They have 108.
Right.
And this retaining wall, Which one, what is this one? Is there any special
Yeah, there's
assessments
one
to
on the
the
back.
individual?
If you look around the unit on the front edge and so forth, there's a retaining wall they built there.
Landscaping back. and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this retaining wall too is not specific to any of the particular houses, I
Right,
believe,
it's common
more-
across the whole
right, yeah,
strip.
it's more-
strip
Yeah,
on-
like a curb appeal retaining wall where there's an entrance.
I think that was the main purpose behind it, was just to keep pass through from going through the yards. The whole place.
Yeah, I try to drive to the yard and it just doesn't work.
No?
We've had that discussion.
Still there, Johan?
All right, anything else with Sandpiper Crest?
I'm just pleased. This has been a problem child for us, so I'm pleased that it's mostly funded. So,
All right, then the last one to discuss is Westlake. So in Westlake, we looked at streets, fencing, well pump.
Yeah, as to the fencing, I live on Nature Ridge, so where's the aluminum fence there?
it's the fence that
The-
divides the houses up on the front of the school. And there's also
So that's on his property line, or is that on HOA's property line?
not that fence, the outside one on,
Boy, yeah.
Boyette, not Boyette, but the Lake Fish Hawk.
No, the,
That's the CDC fence.
yeah, so right,
That's not-
the fence on Boya is CDD, so right, that's.
Yeah, but
not-
this picture right here, where is this?
I believe it's on Nature Ridge, so
No, I live on Nature Ridge. It's all wooden fence in front of our, except
No,
for
there's a
the
separate-
first house.
There is a-
yeah, there's a small,
This, oh, that's not owner, owned back there in the corner of that and then Boyette. I thought that was,
no, so on Nature Ridge, it's mostly wooden fence, but there is a front section that's aluminum. And then the aluminum fence on Boya, yeah, belongs to the CDD, so that was not included.
yeah, I understand that, but where is this? What I'm saying is I live on Nature Ridge, so I'm just, I don't know where that's at unless it's considered that very first house. from-
Yeah, it's not very long. It's only 114
So that's.
linear feet, so that we're talking that's probably runs with about 2 houses.
Yeah, the front part by the.
So if it's flush with the wooden fence, that's an owner's fence, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think
So
so.
Nature Ridge runs into like the front of the community all the way down. So the
Yes.
First house has the aluminum fence, then it's wooden fence past his house all the way down. So I'm just trying to figure out where this is at.
This is the one by the front, but she's got a good statement at this point that the fencing behind the houses in that neighborhood has been deemed as the owner's property. So this may not be included in this part.
Oh, okay.
Only the 690 feet between the houses
Mhm.
of wooden fences is part of the HOA.
It's pretty showing here, 690.
Yes,
Of
and
the
linear
wooden
feet.
fence, but this aluminum fence, I don't believe is one of the assets for the neighborhood.
And so the other thing is you gotta remember this, the pictures of the wooden fence. Some could be damaged from the owners, if it's on the owner's property or also
Yeah,
the
this isn't
HOA.
orange at all.
but with the aluminum fence, that would be
That's what I'm trying to say. I can't, that looks extremely,
That would be surprising. So look at the kind of the 5th picture. This one, you can, doesn't show up real great in black and white. But you can kind of see just a little bit right here that it goes from wooden to aluminum.
yeah, so that's the first house, so that belongs to the owner.
That seems, if that's the case, I would definitely change it, but that seems like a strange,
To my understanding, I do agree, the HOA does not own a fence.
okay. It seems strange that that would be the case, being that it runs with the wooden one though.
Right,
I
but
mean,
what we're considering the HOA is the wood that's not behind someone's house.
okay, yeah, not a problem.
And that's,
I'll remove it.
that's a 690 feet. Yeah, listed here. is-
If it's the wooden fence that's on public property, then that's HOA,
Mhm.
no house in front of it. yeah.
So just a segment between where the well pump is
Mhm.
and my house, which is that blue house. So that's the segment that's the HOA. The rest of it is individually owned. at this point.
Do you have a picture of the map where it's outlined? Let me show you.
No, he's got the 690 in there. That's not a problem. I don't think.
Right, okay. I will-
Mine Rob, but that was not mine.
So, all right, so I'll remove the aluminum fence there.
Appreciate that. Thank
It's,
you.
yeah, it's just a small
It's a
amount,
small
so it
amount,
will
yeah.
make a minimal difference. but-
It's not changing our market right now. So even if the study doesn't change our market, every element that didn't get affected by it. Everyone else is going down.
Oh, and then you were saying too, the wooden fence, the cost estimate you got was higher, right?
Yeah, it's, Heather got a couple estimates on it and, we can forward those to you if you like. I didn't bring it with me, but it was quite a bit higher.
There's 2 estimates for the wind fence that were given.
Any consideration to going with vinyl?
Yeah, we have quotes for that as well.
Oh, okay, because I mean, you know, I would, you know, my personal opinion is just to go with vinyl. It's more, stands up better with the
We're
weather.
actually gonna have a discussion about that on
Okay.
Wednesday, so. but-
And that's the thing too, in the past, it used to be a wooden fence was cheaper, but that's not necessarily the case now too with wood costs just through the roof.
The only thing we have to worry about with vinyl is annual pressure cleaning and so forth, because they get mildew release.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Yeah.
But there's, certainly considerations there. That actually raises the price nearly double of what you had the vinyl fence does. About $42,000 is the quotes that we got.
For the vinyl.
So that's a whole topic for Wednesday. It's
Yeah,
like,
and it's also limited on getting numerous quotes for the current landscaper or maintenance people to maintain it because it's not their work and their job. So
I disagree.
it's like a huge
Should not have been.
for maintaining the
discussion
fence.
mess, yeah.
They don't maintain the fence, they never would.
No, but they have to still,
Yeah,
the maintenance of it.
no, the landscapers would never touch the fence. That's separate maintenance.
What was ballpark estimate for the wooden fence?
24 was the lowest price we got on the wooden fence, and we had, repairs from 5 to 11,000, depending on what it is, but
Oh, okay.
but the replacement cost was 24 for the wooden right now.
Oh, okay.
It's a low side. I'm not so far off of what yours was, still lower.
Yeah. Yeah, that fence too, it just,
Terrible. I know.
yeah, like the installation was
Sunk its
was
foot in the
awful.
dirt, I
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
everything about it.
it was a joke. I mean, like that shouldn't happen at that.
The way the fence came about is that county law requires there be a visual barrier between a commercial property, i.e. the school,
Mhm.
and a residential property. It can be, the first recommendation is to burn and plant. Their second recommendation is to build a wall. The third recommendation is to put a fence in. The builder got caught with their pants down and stuff that up at last minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it looks like someone did their first fence or
Exactly,
something.
because
I
when I
mean,
bought my
that's-
property, there was no fence back there. When I was through.
Yeah,
Then I got there and like, where's this fence come from?
yeah.
It's
So
been there since 2015. So I think what happened was because the school was happening and, those little divider black fences, in
Yeah.
the states, just a liability issue.
Yeah.
With the chain link fence for kids and
the fence was
so
installed.
it was cheaper at that time for a builder. Hey, let's just smack this up here and we'll worry about later. And
Just want to make sure that it was installed 2018. So it wasn't very.
well, I read somewhere it was discussed.
Yeah.
Or the link chain link fence was 2015.
Well,
One
that's the
of the two,
school's-
so,
yeah, the
yeah.
school has to have the chain link fence in there by law too, so that's the school's fence.
So that's why we have that in between no man's land between the
Yeah,
link fence and
right.
the chain link fence.
Yeah.
So it's just, and
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
it's just
Yeah, that's just sloppy work by the
inherited mess for
installer.
our
Yeah.
community, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So let me ask you about this. How do you envision the sidewalk repairs being done?
So, just, generally, you can kind of do them annually or every few years, but just as necessary. I mean, you'll probably have someone go out, try to mark all the bad areas. And first you want to, try to shave them if you can. But as trees get bigger and larger and everything like that over time. You know, they do more damage, you know, and as time goes on, you're gonna probably end up replacing some panels here and there. But it's, you know, not thought to be widespread or anything like that, but just a small allowance for repairs as necessary.
Well, we're finding that it's really more expensive than we thought it was gonna be to fix those. The way you've got it in here is just a lump sum that's dropped in 4 years from now, right?
Yeah.
And then 10 years every year after that.
No, yeah, so like every 10 years, yeah. So do it in 4 years and then do quite a few. The reason I did it like that for this association or this sub-association, typically I'll do sidewalks, let's say every 3 years or 5 years. But those first 10 years, you're not likely to have many problems. You're much more likely to have problems once you get to 10 years or certainly 15 or 20 years. So, yeah, so in the future, what I would probably do, let's say you update the report 4 years from now, you know, then I would probably put it on a 5-year schedule and, you know, not have the cost at the 10-year amount, but a 5-year.
Yeah, one of the things is that our area, of course, they've laid concrete over mature trees, which is unlike, you know, some of the areas where planting new trees takes like 10 years for them to start to get roots system.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have a section of it, but probably needs repair.
Yeah. Once you get to, especially 10 years, you might start to notice a little bit, but once you get to 15, you'll see that, you know, there's some problems. We've been in subdivisions where they have oak trees between the sidewalk and the street. It is 15 or 20 years later, and it's just a total disaster.
John, were you recommending some other schedule for that, is what you were alluding to?
Well, what I was thinking, I'm also chairman of the maintenance committee over there now.
Okay, I wear multiple hats too, you know, so.
So what I'm finding is that we're younger than, it sounds like you guys are more mature than.
No,
We're like-
our neighborhood's only really, the first house was 4 years ago.
I'm just saying.
So it's, ours is about 5 or 6 years.
Our trees are more mature because they built around all those big oaks.
Right. So what we're finding is we're finding pockets, you know, that, and what we're thinking about is rather than the way you've developed this is that it would, in theory, we have to have it on land so it all gets laid here. Pooled would be better, but I've also been toying with the idea that pulling it out of the reserves and making it a regular repair cost might be more reasonable because it's
Budgeting it annually.
budgeting annually rather than through the reserve itself.
Well, we do have some allotment in the budget for repairs of the sidewalks at the moment. It's nominal, but it's enough to cover a slab or two. But I don't know if I don't. you know,
My thought is
I was trying to get his idea.
Yeah, I prefer to,
That's what I feel about it.
I prefer to leave it in just from the standpoint of, hey, it's in there, everyone's aware of it, you know, that you have some amount of money associated with it. But I know what you're saying. I mean, it might be something too, where maybe you do just this real small repairs, some, you know, a few $100 or $1,000 worth of sidewalk grinding or something, you know, as necessary every year or two, and then, you know, touch the reserves more as like, hey, we're gonna replace a panel or
Because a
something.
lot of that though isn't that large, is it? I mean, we have on the sidewalks and it's just looked at it.
Yeah, it's a $24,000 in here. First replacement cost is going to be $26,000.
Okay.
That's in 4 years.
Right.
So, and I look at your sidewalk here, there's nothing there that's going to cause you a problem. So if all of them are like that.
Well, they're not. but
They're
that's the-
not.
that's the
They're
answer.
not.
Yeah,
They're not.
that's interesting too, and you're in Westlake too, that you inherited some very mature trees
Yes,
too,
yeah.
so that can cause
That was
problems
the-
faster than normal too.
Yeah, that was the attraction to the area, but then
Yeah.
it's also the detraction to the area.
Yeah.
Think of it that way. So,
Yeah,
you know,
Well, that, what I've been thinking about for us is a landscaping issue. How much of the better landscaping on the trees could save the cost of having to replace the sidewalks or pieces of it. If there were ways that we could keep the trees from getting so tall and that their root system doesn't go so far beyond the boundaries of the size of the trees.
Trees that we have are mostly grand oaks, which are protected. So you can't really mess with them too much.
That's okay.
Unless you just cut it down like the builder did and take the $50,000 fine, which is what he did.
Of course, he
But,
paid for it.
No, it's actually a little easier to deal with trees. The last few years, they changed the state ordinance about that. Now, if it's on like HOA property, might be a different story. And actually, there's something in the legislature about that. I don't even fully understand it this year, but
No, I didn't see a change. One thing that I do know for sure is that, the pine trees are not protected at all. You can hack away at those. And then,
but yeah, it used to be the oak trees were like impossible to do.
golden
And-
basically.
Yeah, and-
But they have to be over so much growth
Yeah.
and so many points. There's a whole measuring system
Yeah.
about protection. of
and
them.
like, I think too, if you get an arborist in like that will give you a report and say it's deceased, you do have a right to remove it. So you have a little bit of leeway that way, but otherwise, yeah, not a whole lot you can do with that.
Yeah, and that's kind of, we did have one that went bad, actually went behind our home that ended up getting disease that we cut a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And it was, when they told us, it was like a one meeting, we're gonna cut the tree down. I looked at it, I'm like, oh yeah, it needs to come down.
Yeah.
And it was very obvious at that point, it was really bad, so.
It's definitely something you have to go through too with the county.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
We
a-
had some homeowners removing trees. that-
yeah, oh, yeah, you need,
Oh,
you need permits and things, like I live in the
Yeah.
city of Tampa and in a 60-year-old house, and we removed a diseased oak tree. Well, my neighbor and I was actually in their yard, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, you have to have a permit, and then the inspectors are out looking at it and everything. I mean, it's,
So
trees
building
are,
landowners have made that mistake.
yeah,
She brought up a good,
Trees are
good,
protected.
good point. Because the streets, and this might be true of Sagewood, I don't know this to be a fact, but I do know it to be for ours. The street signs in our neighborhood, because they're custom street signs, the county does not maintain.
Mhm.
If something breaks them, they are an expense in ours, or we just putting that under maintenance, because the posts and so forth eventually have a useful life and so forth as well. That's something that should be added in.
I think it's so minor in Westlake, because if it was something, what's that?
Somebody hits it.
Yeah,
Well,
if,
that's covered under other areas, it's not a reserve.
if it was, you had 30 street signs and things like that, I would
We
definitely
probably have a dozen,
put it in.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe enough to do it. I think thought with it was just that it's,
Should be built in as possible maintenance. expense.
yeah,
Okay.
just, I mean, you can go either way with that. Like street signs, sometimes places will get all new signs, new poles, new everything. Other places just replace just one sign here and there. So
Because that was our consideration as well. There's actually, and I believe Sage was the same thing, anyone with the private streets, that the county, once you customize the signs, they. won't
Yeah.
touch them.
yeah, in Sagewood too, I think there was only,
There's only a few.
yeah, I think
Big- big circle,
right, that's what I
yeah,
say,
yeah.
it's a circle. So there's actually only one, there might only been one post in
The
a
one
street
where
sign and
where
one of the stop
circle comes
signs.
back at T,
Yeah.
back, I think there's two there,
Yeah.
that's all, yeah. No, I agree with you. Okay. Good thought, forgot about that one.
Because I was just thinking that we have this, as a private area, we have the street signs and we have the street lights.
So the lights are leased.
And is that Tico?
It's a
that-
Tico
That
lease that costs us
Tico
a fortune.
mess that's costing us a fortune with CDD?
Yeah, that great deal that the builder made that should have been shot in the head with, yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I've studied that before, researched that for some other communities, and like whether or not it makes sense, because sometimes they'll have an opportunity to just outright purchase the streetlights versus continue on a lease, and almost always it's better if you could just own.
Oh, I'm aware of that.
We
yeah.
can't do
And they
that
just
anymore.
jacked the
Yeah.
price up astronomical. That's the
Yeah.
38% increase we're talking
Yeah.
about.
We talked to Tico about our lights, and they said, you either have them or you don't.
Mhm.
We're not in the sales business for lights, we're in the leasing business.
Right.
Yeah,
And the electricity and the leasing all gets wrapped up in one big bill.
And it's a 30-year lease
Right.
for the CDD.
The,
Do you have an option to purchase after?
we haven't seen the contract, I'm just not sure if it's a
It's-
buyout or,
No, there's no buyout.
yeah.
It's just at the end of 30 years, it goes to month, or
Or you get another.
negotiate,
Yeah.
and put some more in, so.
Yeah, it's a bad deal no matter which we're looking at,
Yeah.
because they're making big money. I know the CDs, they said it's like $34,000 a month they're spending on the lights, and I counted the lights, and you could purchase them for 3 months worth of lease.
Yeah.
They said at the meeting that it increased the monthly to by $89,000.
Right, this year.
This year alone.
You know, I mean, what is the justification for their increase? I mean, okay, you power lights with a coal-fired,
Oh, the
you
poles are
know,
working on that.
generator or something, you know, as your like true source of fuel, but like, man,
I really,
I don't see how they can.
that sounds wrong, because the only thing that could increase the price on is the fuel,
Yeah.
the lights.
Now, they increased the
The
leasing price
lease.
too. We've seen that on ours as well. You should check.
Well, you should check, because leases are usually set for X number of years within certain parameters.
Yeah, some communities too have said, like, with respect to some of their contracts, that they said certain vendors, now Tico may be different, they have to follow, but they said certain vendors are just not following their contracts at all. They just, you know, include gas surcharge, you know, 20% or something, and just because costs have
Yeah, I
gone
don't
up
think
in
that the
there.
actual base cost of the lease went up. I think that the maintenance cost of the lease went up, which is a variable they increased. And then they, of course, the fuel costs went up too.
Mhm.
So that's what they're seeing.
That's hard to believe,
I know.
38% in a year.
That was a sidebar. Sorry about that.
And
Something that's irritating me.
Well, it irritates me too,
How much
because
is
we're
Wesley
no longer subject to state control.
88%.
Thank
So
you.
somewhere along the line, somebody gave them the right to do that.
Oh,
Yep, of course.
Also, real quick back to Wesley, those quotes are based on 1,300 square feet. So she has a thing quote, and you look at it, it's from the front of our community to his property.
For the vinyl fence, because we'd have to replace the whole fence in its entirety if they were going to replace it. So
So that includes, you know,
for replacing the wooden fence, it's the 690. For the vinyl fence, that quote price is for the entirety. Of course, that seemed kind of silly to do that in the first place, because I already had approval to remove mine, which is coming out next week. So,
Oh, okay, so, help my memory here, so with that, would it be certain fences behind houses are changed or something? Why are there the two differing quantities?
I think it was just an oversight. The reality is that we should have only been quoting all along the 690 feet.
Yeah, okay,
Because that's the part that the HOA maintains.
yeah,
The other part of it should not have been considered in any
oh,
fashion.
okay,
This whole fence
is-
issue came up by one individual wanting to extend the fence.
yeah, okay, that's what I was wondering, something like, so,
Yeah.
so essentially, the vinyl quote is 21,000, you know.
I'm guessing if you
roughly.
did the math,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay,
So
Okay.
it's closer to yours. I
Okay.
think it's still higher, but we can probably have that requoted to the right number. So it's in our best interest.
Okay.
Actually, I've already asked him. He's got it by square footage. So I just did the square footage calculation myself, which I can forward that to you too. That little spreadsheet I'm working on. Which I do a lot by my spreadsheet.
So I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
I looked at your email. where
Which one?
This one was dated April 7th, where
Okay.
you were talking about the changes in the rates.
Okay.
You were saying here that the estimate is an increase of $164 per unit.
That was my estimate before he did his.
So his estimate
It's 168.
for this component,
Yeah.
okay. But we could bring it down to 102 if we went to pool,
We could,
save $60 a lot.
but then it increases everybody else.
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah, no, it does.
Well, it doesn't increase everybody else because everybody gets the master, which
Oh,
we're
no, I'm
talking
just talking
about.
about the amount, the difference here is you're talking about difference of, with the $75,000, it's gonna be $100 in the first place, but the these numbers here would have to stick with the higher number as opposed to the lower number you have here. Theirs is already increasing by, let's see, if you want me to just pull them out for the Sagewood. Sagewood is 59.56 is what we're funding right now per month per unit. This would triple. So that's what I'm looking at is how it affects, the individual, because this is per month, this is only per year.
Mhm.
That's quite a bit of money.
Well, yeah, well, no, I realized that was per month, yeah.
Yeah, the master's per year, 102 annually. Or 168 annually. It's a smaller amount of money in the long run, give or take. But yeah, whatever we decide on that, it's fine. It just know that there's effects. So that's all.
So I guess I was misreading that because you say that an increase of $164 a month, it's really an increment of what they're paying now versus 164.
No, they're paying $663 per month for our funding right now. And this is 168, so it's actually $6.63 is what we're paying in funding for the unit per annum. This is $162 increase. This would be, the $100 one would be $94 increase.
So you're telling us, when we look at this and he's giving his total amounts for expenses and balancing the funding and all that sort of stuff,
Right.
you're telling us what the increase is, not what
No,
the actual is.
that's what he's saying.
That's what
it would be
he's
funding.
saying for 2023, if you. look
So
in this column.
168 is the amount for this year. So if
No,
it's,
that's not the amount for this year.
No, that's for
all
next
these are the
year.
amounts for next year. The amount this year is
okay, when we
$6.
go in under this program, the monthly fee is going to be $168.
No, that's per annum on the master. That's not the dues, that's an increase to the 535 we pay. So it's $690 a month.
So that's
per
what
year.
I'm, so you're saying you've somehow factored in there, you've taken out what we're already paying and you're saying it's going to go up by $168.
No, this is what it will be.
It's $168.
We're paying $6.63 now.
We're only paying
month.
$6.60.
A year?
We're only funding the master $8,332 per annum right now. Nothing. We're not funding the master at all.
So it's all back on the rest of them? I mean, how did we get at least $185,000 in there at this point at $8,000 a year?
Because it's at some point.
There are probably some
No.
transfer fees or dumps of some sort of money, or maybe one.
It's a
dump.
long story, but they were not properly funding the other budgets and keeping it in the same reserve. That's why we just voted this year to separate the reserves completely.
Mhm.
So some of that money, actually $75,000 of it actually should have gone back to the other units. When we do those adjustments on those accounts, that number is going to go down. It's going to go down quite a bit. So
you're going to take money out of the 185 and put it in these other places. So we got even
Well,
less.
we're gonna try and take it out of operating because they have a surplus in the operating that we're trying to take it out and not affect this. But even so, that's what we're funding. What we budgeted this year annually was $8,232.76 per unit. I mean, for all units divided by 1242, which is $6.63. Terribly underfunded. So those numbers are based on that terribly underfunding. This is the one that's going to be affected the most is the master. The others, like, for example, Westlake's numbers were $23.29 per month per unit. This says $24.19. We're hardly going to see any change. The others, Sagewood is going to go up 200%.
Well, I guess the
I think
thing
you have
is
a revolt on your hands.
well, yeah, and especially I think what's gonna question a lot of people is this year we already raised our, we already raised it significantly. for people, so-
Our dues went up $9 in Westlake.
No, well, exactly, when I look at it and say, I know how it's broken down, I'm paying, monthly I pay our fee and then the HOA fee, and it
Right.
comes out to,
535 divided by 12 and
and
then
then plus the
130.
130 that we do, so I pay my monthly fee every month, and then it gets separated, but if I, like, I'm just throwing a number out, say it's $150 I pay every month and it includes both. And then all of a sudden it's gonna go, to that, you know, add another 168, it's like what happened from last year. When you guys
Yeah, ours
figured
went
out
up
your
And I-
numbers.
and when we were doing the budget,
substantially.
I absolutely warned about this because we didn't have a reserve study. I absolutely went over and over and over.
But
and over.
even more than
Yeah.
that, Sean, honestly, folks, the real answer is, we do not pay for what we own.
Yeah, right. I mean,
That's
that's,
just,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
it,
just-
and that's, you're living in this posh community and you're not paying for
Oh,
it.
that is true,
That's
but,
just the end of it, you know.
well,
it
people are,
stinks.
people are gonna ask the accountability, well, what the hell happened, you know, I mean, somebody's gonna have to.
Well, the accountability is right here. We just did.
Yeah, I mean-
Well, no,
I-
I
that's what
totally
I'm
get it,
saying.
but people, I mean, we're just gonna have to say, hey, listen, it was this big.
Well, I think we have to do
Even when
a-
Mess up.
we- Even the,
Well, all
even
I'm
the
trying to
blogs
do
and when
is-
we talked about this online, we told people that after the reserve study, and my estimate that you saw the 164 was the number I came up without Steve doing his math. I did my own math.
Mhm.
That's how close I got, by the way, Steve. So
Wow.
I don't know how I did it, but
Maybe you lucked
it was an
into it.
accident. I was lucky. But the reality is that that's what I was expecting would happen. So when we were doing the budget and we knew we were gonna have to increase the dues anyway, we tried to increase the dues enough to offset this. And here's the caveat, okay? We are going to be saving money on several areas that we've talked about that are kind of not disclosed yet, that will offset this. So my guess is that our dues increase will probably stay fairly level on the master. The others affected, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, this is why you do get a reserve study and you do hire, you know, a third party to do it. It's not, you know, you had the developer before and their whole goal is to just keep everything as low as they can to, hey, look, you can live in this really nice community, the fees are low, and,
Of course, they sold it to us.
yeah, exactly.
I bought it.
You know, so you get farther behind and farther behind, and, you know, now you're at close to 9 years, I guess, for,
9 years into
you know,
it, yeah.
for some of the first owners in here, and, you know, and you've only owned or had residents control it for 3 years, and you're still getting your house in order, and it's not an increases as much as like, this is just what it needs to be. I mean, it's,
And I think Tommy's on that same mindset.
Yeah.
We know that this needs to be done. In fact, this is one of the things that Tommy got to know me about. It's the first thing I asked for when I got in the neighborhood and tried to hammer it out last year. That's why I called you in October, said, can you get this done?
yeah, I know.
Remember? Before
Yeah,
we
I
got
do
the
remember
budget
that.
done.
Yeah.
And we decided to just
It was
push forward.
Good that you did it this year. It
Yeah.
just would have been too much going on
I know.
in such a short period of time. Yeah.
But I wanted to get the impact all at once as opposed to.
Yeah, no,
piecemeal.
I understand that. Yeah.
But I get it. We're here. This is where
Yeah.
we're at.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is too, like, at least the way I look at things, like, I want as much information as I can have to try to understand it, as opposed to, oh, hey, this is the way we've always done it, you know, like, yeah, we haven't raised dues in a few years, and it's just, that's a recipe for disaster.
I
I
agree.
mean, I understand, you know, selling it to the community or, you know, to someone who's kind of apathetic, they live here, they pay their dues, and then they see an increase, oh my gosh, why are our dues going up? Yeah, I do empathize with you and understand that that's,
The
It's
worst
not-
case
it's
scenario
not-
is doing a
Yeah.
special assessment. That's the.
yeah, exactly.
And that would
And
be
so,
horrific at
right,
that point.
yeah, I mean,
So-
it's far more effective to pay as you go with this as opposed to a lump sum special assessment of $1,000 or $2,000 or, you know, whatever it would have to be. And, 'cause-
Lucky we discovered it, huh?
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. I mean,
Discovered it.
you know, in
Well, I know,
general,
that's why he-
in general, too, reserves
Yeah,
work
that's what I
best
meant,
when
yeah.
time is on your side.
Mm.
So for the most part, you're still a pretty young community. Time is mostly on your side. So you still have time to fund reserves properly. And
That is a plus. I mean, the way this was going, could you imagine discovering all this in another 5 years from now?
yeah, exactly. Because that's 5 years.
Well, I wouldn't
of-
be here then, so.
You're probably right. I speak on myself by then, but, you know.
So.
No, and I agree with you. I'm paying for what we own, we need to do. We've had that problem in Encore too.
I look at
I'm
what-
just saying that our sales job, we have to help them understand what the benefits of doing this are, because many of them believe that reserves benefit somebody in the future, not them.
No, it's,
And,
it's immediate. I mean, there's
Yeah.
stuff failing everywhere that's
Yeah.
going to be
Well,
replaced.
and it, you know, just,
But they don't understand
Yeah.
that because they've got the reserves, their prices, more, their houses are more valuable than they would be if they didn't. have
Right,
the
and most of us have seen
Very
So we
true.
have to
at least
sell them
a
on stuff
60%
like.
increase in value in the last couple of years. That's gotta be offset by something too. That means expenses go up with it.
Right.
It's just, it's, ridiculousness to think that it's not gonna make a change.
yeah, it-
My goal is with the 75 in here, though, Sean, to put yourself at ease, the 75, but not included in here, this number is gonna come down. And that number is gonna get offset by the other things we talked about. I'm pretty sure, if I'm doing my math correctly, that at the end of this budget, we should be fairly close to where we're at, maybe just a little teeny bit increased. The ones that I'm worried about right now is Sageway. I'm not worried about Westlake. I'm not worried about even, these are all pretty even. This one's the big one.
And we shouldn't run so lean. You know what I mean? There should always be, there should always, even if it's $1, there should always be an increase, because otherwise everything else increases all year long.
yeah.
No, I mean, nominally, of course.
Yeah.
If you can afford to do it nominally, but there are rules that require us to reduce them if we've overfunded, obviously. 'Cause
If we find that we're in the same.
we did last year, we reduced one because we were overfunded in one area, and they're gonna cost effectiveness is gonna change on that, but the reality is that if we collect more than the 90% test, we have to pay 30% on the tax. So,
So now you've lost 30 cents on your dollar.
right, which is better to offset someplace else or build something.
Build something, do something.
All right, how long to make the corrections? Can you have it done by morning? Just kidding.
You'll send it, you're going home. How long does it take you to go home? Yeah.
No, we're just kidding, Steve. Westfield.
Well, let's kind of work backwards. When would you like to have it?
We're not in budget discussions yet, but I'm planning to, by end of June, I will be in serious budget discussions for different reasons.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
And,
I'm talking a week to 2 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
that I can do.
I mean, like, I didn't know if you wanted it like
We have a
next
board
week. All
meeting.
right, that might be
We
tough,
have a
but
board
yeah,
meeting,
I mean,
It'd be nice to be able to discuss this.
yeah, when is your board meeting?
It's always the third Thursday of the month,
No, last Thursday.
the last Thursday of the month, sorry.
Last Thursday of the month.
The 20, what is it, 24th?
It's gonna be the.
Come on, John.
26th. If you
That's
can grab
after
it
April
by the
15th, that's all I know.
19th.
Okay. Today is, yeah, I should be able to.
If you do it by the 19th, that'd be great. That gives, Sean, gives you a week with it.
Yeah, I only need a day with it afterwards because I've got all this stuff already notated and in my color coding and so forth. So at that point, if it's hit the money, then we can just sell it to the rest of the board members and be done with it.
You know, I have a little different approach. I
What's
thought
that?
about that. If we're talking about the fact that some of the offset to this is going to be savings on the operating side, I would rather kind of keep this close to the vest for the time being and present them both at the same time.
Okay, well, that
So
will be
that-
the same time at this point. I'll tell you why.
Let him finish.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. I sometimes get overexcited. Go ahead.
Well, it's okay. I'm just saying that I'm really concerned that we need to tell the community what's happening. And if this gets out to the community, as iffy as it is, given there's some other adjustments we made, and given the fact that we've worked in some cost savings that have come off the operating side.
Right.
If we just talked about this, they're all going to revolt. We will be out of office, they will be impeached, and there will be a whole bunch of people coming here. But if we manage it right, so that we can help them understand what's going on, and even though the reserves set aside goes up, we have savings in the other side, so the two taken as an annual cost to them is closer to what we're doing now, because they all choked on it last year. If we do this again, they're going to choke again.
Understood.
And so I think that if we can just sort of keep this close to the vest and fine tune it later as we're getting closer to where we're ready to make the operating budget presentation, that we can also say at the same time that we've worked on this throughout the year, we come up with a new reserve study as well.
Well, our drop dead date for the other thing we're talking about is the 1st of June.
But, I think I know what you're talking about.
I'm sure you do.
It's not my job, but I'm just one of several.
I'm sure. I'm not even 1 of 7. I'm 8 of 7.
I should need to be talking to you more.
Steve, thank you for your time.
Oh, absolutely. You've been great answering the questions. I appreciate the help.
One final question here, actually. So the 75,000 you're gonna add to reserves, like for the master. Since we're doing component funding as well, how should that be broken down into categories?
I would do it by the percentage of the funding is what I do, just break it down.
Or just like, okay, hey, certain assets are, this one makes up 26%. So
Right.
give it.
Exactly, because there's no way for us to know.
Yeah.
If it was a reversal thing we did in the change of books and the money was taken out and not put back, and it needs to go back, and that's where it's going. It's going back into the general funding. So whatever that component percentage happens to be, just break it down that way.
Yeah.
And add it to it. That's a good point.
So are we going to stick to our component approach?
I think that should be discussed. I mean, it does, if we can make these numbers work, I feel better about component.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
see,
worried about the numbers.
see where the numbers come in, and it's best to make your decision when you have all the information. I mean, I'd see where the revised numbers, because that's really gonna make quite a big difference on the
Yeah,
master.
we're looking at a $68 savings here, probably $64 savings here, and substantial there. So it could be a big difference for us.
Yeah, and I have a different approach to that, so we can talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, whatever you feel, open to any suggestions at this point, just trying to chum through the.
You know, the other change too I'm gonna do globally is kind of what we talked about with inflation. So for all of them, for the first 3 years, I'll have it at 6% and then 3%.
That'll change this number again.
Yeah, so that may have some effect.
Yep, it will.
It probably won't change the first year as much as you think, but it will change things.
Well, great.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna,
Are you having fun yet?
yeah, I am. And,
Okay.
I have one homework assignment. I'm gonna go look at those retaining walls in the paired villa. It's,
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Yeah, very nice talking with you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys too.